The moment you close your eyes, night seeps in like a velvet tide, pressing against your eyelids until vision becomes a memory. In the hush of your room, every creak and sigh feels amplified. The settling of walls, the soft protest of the mattress, the distant drip of a faucet somewhere beyond your reach. You might tell yourself it's nothing, just a house breathing. But when darkness falls with such sudden insistence, it carries secrets in its wake. The air grows heavy, as though the stillness itself has weight, and you find yourself inhaling cautiously, unsure whether you draw in comfort or dread. So, before you sink deeper into your blankets and allow the shadows to claim you, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe, only if you truly savor this descent into the unknown. And drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's endlessly fascinating to chart the far corners of the world gathering here tonight. Now, dim the lights until the corners of your room blur. Perhaps leave a fan whispering softly in the background, and join me as we embark on this journey together. You lie there, the cool sheets clinging to your skin like a second breath, and tune your senses to the soft hum behind you. That gentle drone, barely perceptible at first, swells into a lullaby for the uneasy, a steady reminder that mechanical life persists, even when human presence fades. In that hum lurks a promise. Something is watching, listening, perpetually awake. The shadows dance at the edges of sight, curling into shapes that recede when you blink and press forward when you exhale. You stare at the ceiling, convinced you saw a silhouette writhe between the rafters. But when you shift your gaze, all is still. A floorboard sighs beneath the weight of absence, echoing somewhere down the hall. You wonder if the sound was real, or simply the trick of expectation, the mind filling silence with phantom steps. Nothing comes, and yet your heart races at the thought of unseen passage. You clamp your jaw, willing calm into every muscle, but the room holds its breath in solidarity, as if daring you to slip up. You fight the urge to reach for the light switch, knowing that illumination would only banish one form of terror to make room for another. In the faint glow of your nightlight, if you have the courage to leave one on, you might notice the shadows stretch unnaturally long, pooling at the foot of your bed like ink spilled across a page. They writhe and thicken, congealing into shapes that mock the familiar. A hand, an elongated face, a crouched figure poised on spindly limbs. Your fingers tighten around the edge of the sheet. You remind yourself that these phantoms live only in the periphery, fragile constructs of fear that collapse into dull gray when confronted head-on. And yet, the whisper of possibility lingers. What if you aren't seeing what you think you're seeing? The fan's comforting murmur pulses in your ears, and you decide to lean into that noise, as though its monotone chant could drown out the staccato beat of your pulse. You close your eyes for a moment, just to test it, to see if darkness can somehow soothe you into oblivion. But even with lids drawn down, the mind's eye remains wide open, painting pictures against the darkness. Long corridors that stretch into infinity, doors that appear where none existed before, and a presence at the end of every hallway, silent but insistent. An itch of curiosity claws at your calm. You shift on the mattress, careful not to disturb the still air with sudden movement, and force your body to sit up. The air near your feet is colder, as though a draft coils around the base of the bed. You cover yourself with a sheet up to your chin peeking out through a thin slit, every nerve on alert. The texture of the blanket feels rougher now, as if it's imbued with a static charge of apprehension. A bead of sweat drips down your temple, and you catch yourself holding your breath. Outside your door, the hush is unnerving. No hum, no drip, no sigh, only a vacuum that tugs at your ears and fills your throat with dry dread. You can almost feel the walls leaning inward, compressing the space until your room shrinks into nothingness. In that suffocating silence, the only sound that remains is the soft rasp of your own breathing. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. You try to focus on the rhythm, to tether yourself to something predictable. But predictability is a luxury when the night is alive. Your gaze drifts to the window, where pale moonlight filters through the curtains, casting ribs of silver across the floor. Each slat of illumination seems to carve a path for something to advance, to creep closer along the illuminated lines. You imagine a figure gliding just beyond the glass, a reverse silhouette etched into the black of night, waiting for a chance to step inside. You want to peer out, to unmask the threat, but your feet won't touch the floor. They sense the trap and resist. Instead, you direct your attention back to the room's center, the midway point between the bed and the door. If something emerges, it will cross that threshold first. You count imaginary paces in your head. 1, 2, 3. Yet each count seems to echo, stretched comically by the weight of anticipation. By the time you reach 5, your hand is hovering over the bedside lamp, poised for the instant decision. Banish the darkness, or embrace it and face whatever lurks within. Some nights, the choice becomes automatic. The lamp flicks on, and you blench at the glare, blinking away new shapes in place of old ones. But tonight, you linger in indecision, torn between revealing the horrors by light or granting them dominion by staying in shadow. The fan's hum feels suddenly defiant, an ally reminding you that even in this small room, there is still some motion, some life beyond specters. A creak from the closet makes your skin crawl. You turn your head ever so slightly, wary that even the slightest motion might awaken whatever dwells there. You tell yourself it's just a door shifting in a cold draft, yet your mind counters with far darker possibilities. A hand slipping out, fingers brushing the floor, a whisper pressing against the wood. You swallow hard, the lump in your throat growing bigger with every imagined step it takes toward you. Your hand twitches, nearly closing around the lamp switch, when you remember why you told yourself not to jump at every sound. Fear is a parasite, feeding on your heartbeat, your racing thoughts, using them to build cathedrals of terror from single grains of doubt. If you succumb to panic, you lose control, and in that surrender, the true monstrosity of the night reveals itself. But mastery over fear demands a steady resolve, a willingness to stand guard at the threshold of sleep and wake at the first sign of intrusion. So you hold your ground. You keep your eyes peeled, your breaths measured. You let the fan's hum fill your ears like a lullaby for warriors, a mantra against the unspoken horrors. You stare into the ink-black corners, daring shadows to show their true faces. And when the silence seems to swell and pulse, you remind yourself that this is only chapter 1 of the story. There are still 9 more chapters to unravel, and who knows what waits in the margins of those pages. You lean back into your pillow, muscles slowly uncoiling. as though resigning to the thought that perhaps nothing will emerge tonight. The fan continues its gentle cadence. The night's weight settles once more, but this time it feels less like an ambush and more like a test, one you are determined to pass. You let your eyes drift closed, promising yourself that when you open them again, you will be the one watching, the one who commands the darkness, rather than the other way around. And with that promise, you drift, halfway between fear and curiosity, ready to greet whatever the night has penned for you in the chapters yet to come. You first notice it when the moonlight slices through the hallway window, casting its pale beam directly onto the glass surface. The mirror stands there, as if it had always been part of the architecture. Antique frame, chipped with age, the silver backing mottled by time, and a single, long crack running from top to bottom like a jagged scar. In that moment, it feels less like a piece of decor and more like a portal to somewhere you were never meant to visit. The air around it seems colder, the shadows deeper, as though the reflection it holds is unwilling to fully reveal itself. You hesitate, heart drumming against your ribs, before stepping forward. The reflection greets you, but it is not exactly you. Your features are correct. The same angle of jaw, the moonlit highlight on your cheek, but your eyes look wider, haunted by expectation or dread. Behind you in the glass, the corridor stretches infinitely, lit by impossible sconces that drip wax like tears. You do not see your own back. Instead, it's as though you peer through your own form into another world, familiar, yet disturbingly askew. You feel drawn to it, inexplicably compelled to press your palm against the cool surface, but you know better than to touch something that isn't what it seems. Behind you, a faint click echoes, doors somewhere unlocking in response to your approach. You whirl around, heart hammering, but find only empty hallway, walls lined with peeling wallpaper, and long unused picture hooks that sway ever so slightly, as if brushed by unseen fingers. You glance back at the mirror. The hidden world still stares out at you, silent as a crypt. You imagine stepping through, surrendering to curiosity, but an instinctual recoil seizes you. You remember stories of those who vanished chasing reflections, lured by their own desire to see what lay beyond. The frame's ornamentation reveals a subtle cunning, curiously mismatched vines, interwoven with skeletal hands, faces half hidden among the filigree. It feels as though those hands might twitch, those faces might whisper if you get too close. You clear your throat and attempt to steady your breathing. There is something about the mirror that insists on a ritual, an unspoken protocol of gazing and retreating. You swallow, wishing you had a flashlight, or at least the humane glow of a lamp. But you are here in the hush of midnight, and only the mirror demands attention. Your reflection shifts. For a heartbeat, it winks. You jerk back, convinced your eyes have deceived you, that the tremor of your own disbelief is the culprit. The glass remains calm, smooth as water, but the crack at its center seems to pulse, as though something on the other side strains against its prison. You lean forward once more, forced by a foolish magnetic pull, and the world behind you, in the reflection, begins to distend. The corridor's edges warp. The sconces bleed candlelight into rivulets that drip upward, and a pair of dark figures flicker in the distance, indistinct, human-shaped silhouettes that weave in and out of the warped shadows. A sudden gust rattles the windows, and the sconces in your reality extinguish themselves, one by one, until only the moonbeam remains. Only the moonbeam. The figures in the mirror vanish, and the surface returns to its deceptive stillness. You blink and convince yourself it is overreaction, an overactive imagination after Chapter 1's long vigil. But then you realize that your reflection no longer matches your posture. You are upright in the hall, back straight, arms hanging by your sides. But the figure in the glass slumps forward, head tilted, as though weighed down by an unseen burden. The crack in the mirror expands minutely, a thin line that crawls outward, encircling a small patch of the glass. Behind that crack, you glimpse a flash of red, like blood, like fire, like life. You press your hand to the frame, fingertips grazing the cold wood, and for a moment you swear you feel a pulse. A voice, distant and hollow, murmurs in your mind. Look again. You do not speak. You cannot. The hush of the house seems to press upon you, daring you to obey. You bend until your face nearly brushes the glass, inhaling a scent like old parchment and rust. In your reflection's periphery, the world flickers, a carnival of horrors spilling onto the walls, twisting them into a grotesque panorama. Faces of strangers, mouths open in silent screams, fill the background. Limbs twitch and contort, half-formed creatures that vanish when you blink. One hand reaches out from the mirror's edge, fingers curled in a beckoning gesture, and you recoil. The floor beneath you creaks once, twice, as though the house itself breathes in sync with the mirror's pulsing heartbeat. You consider smashing the glass, obliterating this doorway between worlds, but hesitation stops you. The frame's carved angels, if you can call them that, seem to turn their heads in sorrowful protest. You would need a weapon, something heavy and decisive, but nothing in the corridor offers itself willingly. Even the wallpaper peels away at your presence, as though the house yearns to keep you in place. You pinch the bridge of your nose, fighting nausea, as the mirror calls to you with every fiber of its being. Fingers trembling, you slide one cracked fingernail along the edge of the frame. The glass gives a soft moan, like a wounded animal. You step back, chest heaving, and realize the hallway behind you in reality has changed. Where there was once an open archway to the staircase, now stands a door you have never seen before, black and unmarked, its handle a tarnished skull. The mirror's world has spilled over, altering your reality in the smallest of ways. And you know this is no mere hallucination. Steel yourself. You grip the doorknob of that new door, half dreading the chill that will seep through the metal into your palm. It promises escape, or perhaps deeper descent. You glance at the mirror one last time. Your reflection stands motionless, expression blank, yet you feel its gaze drilling into you. You nod once, a silent vow that you will return, that you will uncover the truth behind this haunted glass. As you open the door, a gust of wind blasts the hallway, extinguishing the moonbeam and plunging you into total darkness. The mirror goes black too, its surface void of reflection, as though the thing on the other side has retreated. You step through the threshold, heart pounding in your ears, and the door snaps shut behind you. The last thing you hear is the faintest whisper of glass shifting, as if the mirror sighs in relief. And somewhere down the corridor you have yet to explore, footsteps echo, not yours, but something else, pacing, patient, and incredibly pleased that you have answered its invitation. You advance into the new corridor, the air heavy with anticipation. As the house rearranges itself around your fear, behind you, the mirror waits, its appetite whetted by your gaze. Ahead of you lies another chapter, and your blood hums with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. You press onward, because once you have stared into that fractured glass, you cannot unsee what slumbers beyond. You have become part of its story, and now the mirror will decide how it ends. You step through the black iron door and into a corridor that breathes with an oppressive stillness. The air is thick, as if saturated with secrets the walls have absorbed over countless years. The light here is dim, an odd, flickering glow from sconces that cast more shadows than illumination. The ceiling arches overhead, curving like the ribcage of some colossal beast. Underfoot, the wooden floorboards groan softly, miles away from the familiar squeak of your bedroom floor. Every step you take echoes down the hall, the sound racing ahead of you like a reckless messenger. Behind you, the door clicks shut on its own, sealing off your retreat and committing you to this new realm of anticipation and dread. The wallpaper clings desperately to one side of the corridor, peeling in long, curling strips that resemble wounded flesh. In places, you can glimpse the faded pattern beneath, pale gray florals on a sickly yellow background, as if someone once cared enough to decorate, but long ago gave up on appearances. A single picture frame hangs crookedly, the glass shattered in a web of cracks. Inside, a black and white photograph shows a family whose faces have been scratched away, leaving only blank spaces where eyes and mouths once resided. You approach the frame and feel an inexplicable chill surge through your veins. There is no one behind you now, but you sense a presence, hungry, inquisitive, and amused by your intrusion. Then it begins, a whisper, so faint you almost dismiss it as the warp and weft of the old house settling. It comes from the wall to your left, a soft susurration that rises and falls like the exhalation of a hidden creature. You halt mid-step, straining to hear. The whisper repeats, or perhaps it changes, shifting in tone as though the wall itself is debating what to say. At first the words are indecipherable, a string of consonants rattling behind layers of stone and plaster. You press your ear against the cool surface, heart pounding, and the shape of a sentence coalesces in your mind. Don't mind us, we're just resting. The voice is dry, sarcastic, as if the walls themselves possess a dark sense of humor. You pull back, startled by the mockery. Resting? You murmur, half to yourself. In a wall? The whisper chuckles, a thin, brittle sound that sends goose flesh rippling across your arms. Of course, it replies, through a dozen small cracks. All the best stories are told between the cracks. The wall seems to flex under your touch, as though puffing itself up in pride. A tremor runs down the hallway, rattling the sconce and causing a shard of wax to plop onto the floor with a cold hiss. You step away, glancing at the ceiling beams overhead, now crawling with chittering shadows, flickering in the wavering light. As you continue down the corridor, every footstep is accompanied by new whispers springing from different spots. At one moment, it sounds like a wounded animal whining. At the next, it sighs in amused resignation, as if bored by your attempt to engage. When you pause near a broken archway, the voice emerges in a gravelly tone. Go on, we have nothing but eternity to kill. You freeze, imagining a legion of voices rehearsing jokes in the gloom, waiting for an audience. The corridor stretches on, and the whispers follow, like an invisible chorus, cracking wise and sighing in unison, as if the house itself were on speakerphone. The walls here behave oddly. Some areas are unnaturally smooth, as though freshly plastered, while others bear deep gouges, as if claws scraped their way out. You run a finger along the roughest patch and recoil when it comes away smeared with a dark residue, sticky like old tar. The whisper emanates from that very spot. Careful, we're sensitive about our decor. You suppress a grim laugh, the absurdity of talking walls mingling with the primal urge to flee. Yet part of you is fascinated, ensnared by the dilemma of knowing that someplace behind these surfaces, something waits. You press onward until the corridor forks in two directions, left and right, each passage identical in design and equally uninviting. The whispers intensify, thrumming through both walls simultaneously. They beckon, cajole, and tease. This way, one voice urges from the left, full of laughter and memories. Another calls from the right, deeper and more relentless. No, the fun is down here, with us. You pause between the two, feeling the corridor narrow until it feels like the walls press against your shoulders. The flickering sconces on either side sputter, their flames bending away from the calling voices. You realize that no matter which path you choose, the walls themselves are the labyrinth. A sudden gust of wind billows through the hallway, though there are no windows open and every door is closed. Your hair lifts, and the wax on the floor starts to run backward, creeping up the sconce like inverted tears. From the wall to your right, a new whisper emerges, urgent. Hurry, before we remember you're here. The suggestion is absurd. Why would they forget? But you feel a jolt of panic. Your footsteps pick up pace, echoing like frantic drums. You glance at the left corridor and the right corridor again, indecision warring with fear. You imagine the voices falling silent, then erupting in laughter as you choose the wrong path. In that moment of hesitation, the wall behind you mutters, almost under its breath, "Choose wisely, or we'll pick for you." The floor beneath your feet dips slightly, like the slight tilt of a trapdoor. You imagine the planks parting to drop you into some scream-filled pit where the walls themselves close in around you. You force your gaze forward, forcing your legs to move. You veer left, almost tripping over the tactile slug of melted wax. The corridor stretches out, the voices fading behind you as you commit to this new direction. The whispers continue, albeit more subdued now, as though chastened by your decision. "Fine, leave if you must," the wall intones, its tone pouting with faux disappointment. "But we'll be here when you return." You round a corner and find yourself in a small chamber illuminated by a single overhead lamp. The light flickers, cast in jittering patterns on the far wall. In the center of the room stands a battered writing desk, its surface cluttered with tattered journals, quills dipped in dried ink, and a handful of cracked photographs. The chairs around it are overturned, as though the occupants fled in a hurry. You approach the desk and gingerly pick up one of the journals. Its cover is embossed with an ornate symbol, half floral, half bone. The pages inside are filled with scrawled handwriting, dense and manic, as if the writer's thoughts raced faster than the ink could flow. You skim a sentence. "They told me stories. Then I became the story." The chair behind you creaks, though no wind stirs, and you whirl around, expecting someone to be there. But the room is empty, the lamp still flickering, the whispers reduced to a distant hum through the walls. Your gaze returns to the journal, and you flip through more pages, each note more fragmented, more desperate. Mentions of corners rearranging themselves, voices in the plaster, and doors that vanish at will. Black humor seeps through the pages, jokes about spare parts and fresh souls needed, scribbled next to crude sketches of twisted faces. You choke back a laugh at the absurdity, but your heart races at the realization that this could be the fate awaiting you if you stay. You close the journal and lay it on the desk, its presence both proof and warning. A whisper drifts into the chamber, softer now, almost affectionate. Read the first chapter, traveler. You look around, puzzled. There are no speakers, no mechanical device. It seems to come from the very wood of the desk. The walls exhale a soft sigh, a collective longing that chills your spine. You wonder if you should obey, immerse yourself in the history of those who came before, or leave this cursed chamber behind and search for an exit. The hum of the house feels like a heartbeat, and you're acutely aware that every decision you make feeds its rhythm. Your eyes flick to the still open door, the corridor beyond beckoning like a yawning mouth. You realize that, for all its clever taunts, the house offers no real guidance, only the illusion of choice. The whispers rise again, swirling around you in an invisible vortex, and you sense that the walls are alive, craving your story as much as you crave escape. You take a tentative step back, the desk's surface groaning under the slightest movement, as if resenting your lack of commitment. The lamp flickers one last time and goes dark, plunging the room into a heartbeat of blackness. In that brief instant, the whispers converge into a single phrase, clear as a command. Stay or leave, but decide. Then silence falls, heavy and expectant, like the pause before a scream. You stand there, caught between curiosity and survival, knowing that your choice will echo through these walls long after you have gone. With trembling resolve, you reach for the doorknob, ready to face whatever lies beyond, because at least in motion, there is hope. And so, you step forward into the corridor's wavering glow, the whispers fading to a resigned murmur as you walk away into the next chapter of the house's endless tale. You push open the heavy door and step into a small chamber that smells of dust and faded cotton. The floorboards groan beneath your weight, and the single overhead bulb flickers, casting the corners into churning shadows. Along one wall stands a battered wooden cradle, its chipped paint revealing years of neglect. On the far side, an armoire yawns open like a mouth, its shelves empty, save for a few moth-eaten blankets. But it is the opposite corner that seizes your attention. There, perched on a plinth of ancient stone, sits an old doll. Even in the wavering light, she is unmistakable, an echo of childhood innocence twisted by time into something profoundly unsettling. Her porcelain face is cracked in fine spiderweb lines, and two glass eyes stare out with an uncanny clarity that seems to follow you as you cross the room. Her dress, once perhaps pink or ivory, now hangs in yellowed tatters, clinging to her black-stained limbs like funeral garb. Her curly hair, made of fine, human-like strands, is matted in clumps that gleam in the bulb's feeble glow. You can almost imagine her rocking herself to sleep, humming a lullaby you cannot quite recall. A chill runs down your spine as you realize that the doll's lips are slightly parted, as though she waits for you to speak first. Despite every instinct urging you to turn and flee, you find your feet rooted in place. A faint hum, like the echo of a child's breath, fills the air, though no one else is in the room. You step closer, each movement measured and cautious, and extend a trembling hand. The moment your fingertips brush against her porcelain cheek, the hum crystallizes into a low, breathy voice. "Hello again," it says, in a pitch both sweet and brittle, like sugar soap left out to dry. The doll's glass eyes glint with malicious delight, and you stagger backward, the cradle rattling behind you as though something inside claws at the wood. You swallow hard, chest tight, with both fear and fascination. What are you?" you whisper, scarcely daring to speak. The voice chuckles, a dry, crackling sound that seems to come from every crack in the doll's fractured form. "I am her," it replies. "I am the one you left behind." The words seep into your mind like ink spreading through water, and memories flicker at the edges of your consciousness. The laughter of a little girl, a game of dress-up, the sudden snap of porcelain against stone, and a child's desperate apology swallowed by screaming. You realize with sick clarity that this doll was once her favorite plaything, and that in a moment of careless rage or grief, the child you once were shattered its body and, unknowingly, bound its spirit. The doll's voice shifts, adopting a tone of weary reminiscence. Long ago, she held me in her arms, whispering secrets of tea parties and fairy tales. I tasted every giggle, every tear, storing them inside my hollow shell. But when her world too quickly outgrew me, she cracked my cheek in a fit of tantrum. Just one strike to the head, the porcelain shattered, and I drifted into the void between tears. You flinch at the confession. The air seems to grow thicker, as though the room conspires to contain the doll's sorrow. Yet buried within that sorrow is a spark of something darker, an ecstasy of retribution waiting to ignite. The doll raises her tiny hand, and you see that her fingers end in minute claws, perfect for scratching at doors or throats. "I survived," she continues, her tone sharpening into scorn. "I held on to every ounce of pain she poured into me, gathering it like a fine spice. And in time, I learned that souls are far more nourishing than tears. Better than the laughter of an innocent child is the terror of an adult who realizes their own reflection has turned against them." The chamber trembles, dust motes swirling in the air like hungry motes. You take a step back, nearly tripping over the cradle, but something about the doll's gaze pins you in place, a promise that leaving now will cost you far more than staying. Black humor curls through the doll's voice. She never appreciated my craftsmanship, how I could cradle her sorrow and release it again on a stormy night. Instead, she discarded me, tossed me aside like a broken toy, as though I were nothing more than trash. But who is trash now? You feel your pulse pounding in your ears. A drop of sweat trickles down your temple, and the doll's eyes glimmer. "I've moved on," she adds. "I have hosted many games since then. Hide and seek in the pitch black, tag in the tangled guts of dreams. I've tasted fear, and it is delicious, rich, complex, with just a hint of nostalgia." Her laughter rings out, high-pitched and absurdly gleeful, as if a porcelain figure stuffed with sorrow could find anything amusing. Your instincts scream at you to run, but the door slams shut before your foot reaches it. The chamber's single bulb flickers violently and dies, plunging you into darkness so complete it presses against your eyeballs. For a heartbeat, all you hear is your own ragged breathing. Then the doll's voice whispers from somewhere beside you, "Don't be afraid. I won't break you yet." A small hand brushes the side of your arm, cold as ice, and you shiver violently, muscles tightening. Somewhere behind the darkness, the cradle begins to rock. Though there is no wind, you realize that the room has transformed into a cradle itself, lulling you closer to terror's edge. You manage to utter, "What do you want?" And the response is immediate. "To play a final game," she intones, her voice dripping with sadistic glee. "You see, I'm no longer content with mere memory. I want participation." A faint click echoes, as if a latch has been released, and the walls shift. The plinth slides back, revealing a circle of smooth stone, engraved with childlike drawings, stick figures holding hands, a sun with a jagged tooth smile, and at the center, a tiny heart cracked in two. "Stand within the circle," the doll commands. "Share your secrets with me. I'll hold them close, and in return, I may let you leave with your soul intact." Your heart hammers as you weigh the bargain. You realize that every whisper, every flicker of the light, every crack in the porcelain has been woven into this moment of reckoning. The doll waits, her head tilted, her glass eyes shining with expectant hunger. You take a trembling step forward, one foot crossing the threshold of the carved circle, and you feel a subtle tug, as though invisible strings wind around your ankles, drawing you deeper into the room's dark ritual. With a voice far softer than before, the doll begins her lullaby, a tune you half remember from your earliest years, its melody twisted by the undertones of nightmares. Each note coils around your mind, dredging up buried memories. The first time you lied, the worst apology you ever gave, the moment you laughed as someone else wept. The air thickens, and the walls lean in close, eager to catch every confession. The doll's voice rises, layering harmonies of regret and fear, until your skin crawls and your mind reels. You stagger, caught between the impulse to confess and the terror that true honesty might shatter you as thoroughly as the doll once was. Yet something in the doll's plea resonates, a promise that if you truly remember every misdeed, every lie, every scar you inflicted upon others or upon yourself, you might reclaim a fragment of control. The cradle behind you sways in time with the melody, its shadow stretching long and thin, pointing accusingly at your trembling form. Tears gather in your eyes as the first secret slips from your lips, a childhood betrayal, small but cruel. The word echoes hollowly in the chamber. The doll's glass eyes soften. "Good," she purrs. The next secret follows, a moment of selfishness that cost someone dear. You speak it aloud, voice cracking, and the doll inclines her head in empathy. "You see," she murmurs, "confession is sweet. It nourishes the cracks where light can seep in." You realize with dawning horror that you are not merely recounting sins. You are weaving them into the doll's own tapestry of pain, feeding her power. The melody shifts, growing discordant, and the doll's expression changes. What began as sad indulgence now twists into sadistic delight. She reaches out, porcelain fingers brushing your chin, and you flinch. "More," she insists softly. "I want it all." Your voice shakes as you speak of greater transgressions, years of mistrust, betrayals that still haunt your dreams. With each confession, the carved heart at the circle's center pulses, glowing faintly in the darkness. The cradle's rocking becomes frantic, as though whatever lies nested within is awakening. Your final secret unravels in a gasp, a wound you never thought to reveal, even to yourself. The doll's eyes brim with triumph. She leans forward, lips parting. "Thank you," she whispers, and the chamber's gloom lightens momentarily, as if gratitude itself can illuminate the darkest corners. But then, with a sudden crack, the heart at your feet fractures entirely, shards of stone scattering across the floor. The lullaby dissolves into a scream, and the doll's form fractures along with it, porcelain fragments drifting toward you like lethal rain. You stumble backward, blood pounding in your ears, and the door behind you bursts open. The hall beyond stretches into welcoming light, a stark contrast to the chamber's oppressive shadows. You don't hesitate. Heart clawing at your chest, you bolt through the doorway, leaving the doll's fractured voice echoing behind you. "We will remember." And so should you. You step into a low-lit chamber whose air vibrates with a dull thrum of anticipation, as though the very walls are humming in tune with some unseen orchestra. In the center of the room sits a tarnished gramophone atop a small round table, scarred by decades of spilled tea and cigarette burns. Its horn, once gleaming brass, is now mottled with verdigris, and the turntable appears warped, as if the weight of countless records has permanently bowed it downward. The floorboards around the table are scratched in concentric circles, evidence of restless visitors who paced this way and that while awaiting whatever sound that ancient machine might summon from its slumber. You approach slowly, every step measured, so as not to disturb the hushed reverence that hangs like cobwebs in the corners. The gramophone's crank handle juts from its base, half-turned and frozen in limbo, as though someone began to wind it and then simply forgot to finish. A single vinyl record, its label faded to a charcoal blur, lies in wait on the platter, black swirl, marbled with white specks, like a starfield trapped in a storm. You lift the needle gently, half expecting it to crumble beneath your touch, and set it on the outer groove. The needle clicks into place and remains motionless, waiting for your invitation. You turn the crank. At first, there is only a grinding whine, a mechanical protest that sends a shiver down your spine. Then, with surprising smoothness, the platter begins to rotate, its slow spin filling the air with an anticipatory creak. A moment passes, and then the needle lifts itself gently, dragging across the vinyl as though tasting it, searching for the right moment to begin. When it finally settles into a groove, a crackle erupts, a static burst that jolts you upright. The gramophone gives a reluctant groan, like a creature waking from 1,000-year sleep, and then releases a single note. It is not a note so much as a sigh, deep, resonant, and drenched in sorrow. The sound reverberates through the room, pooling in the corners and dripping down the walls. A melancholic melody follows, each tone riven with an undercurrent of despair, as if the music itself carries the weight of every lost soul who once tread this house's halls. The tune is vaguely familiar, perhaps a lullaby you half remember from childhood nightmares, its cadence slow and deliberate, coaxing you deeper into its mournful embrace. Gradually, words emerge from the melody, a child's voice, soft and tremulous, reciting lines that twist the lullaby into a litany of regret. "Sleep now, dear one," it whispers, "but do not forget the shadows that cradle you." The voice skips, warping on the crackle of the record, and now you hear faint echoes, children's giggles turning to sobs lullabies distorting into guttural laughs. You realize, with an electric thrill of dread, that this record is not merely playing music, but reanimating memories, projecting the broken stories of past inhabitants onto your mind's screen. Behind your closed eyelids, you see flickers of scenes. A mother rocking her baby to sleep, only for the child's eyes to turn black as the night. A young boy dancing in a nursery strewn with toys that twitch like living things. A midnight tea party where dolls come alive and tip teacups with jagged smiles. Each snapshot is edged in static, framed by the hiss of the needle, and each concludes with a bruise of darkness that lingers long after the image fades. You stumble back, nearly tripping over the gramophone table, but the music holds you fast, binding you with threads of sound you cannot sever. As the first record ends, the needle lifts and the platter shudders to a stop, leaving you in a hollow silence that throbs behind your temples. A mechanical click follows, and the record automatically ejects itself, sliding off the turntable and landing on the dusty floor with a dull thud. You watch, astonished, as a second disc rises from a hidden compartment in the base of the gramophone, guided by invisible gears. The new record is creased and cracked, its surface pockmarked with tiny pits that glint like wounds in the faint light. Curiosity claws at you, urging you to wind the crank again. Your fingers tremble as you oblige, and the gramophone heaves to life once more. This time, the crackle is louder, angrier, and the first chord strikes like a hammer blow. The melody is faster now, frenetic, teetering on the edge of a manic frenzy. Voices chatter over the music, a cacophony of whispers arguing all at once. He saw her in the mirror. She opened the door. The footsteps never stopped. Snippets of conversation, accusations, pleas, curses, collide and overlap until they form a single, dissonant howl that reverberates through every bone in your body. You cover your ears, but the sound seeps through the cracks of your fingers, drilling into your skull. The room begins to spin, each wall bowing inward, as though the house itself contracts around you in a fit of mirthless laughter. You force yourself to twist toward the horn of the gramophone, to look into its shadowed depths. But what you see there is not a simple funnel of metal. The inside of the horn has become a tunnel of faces, pallid, contorted expressions, pressed against the brass like ghosts desperate for breath. You blink, and they vanish, replaced by the empty darkness of the horn's throat. The record skips, jerking the music into warped loops. He saw her. He saw her. He saw her. Each repetition ratchets up the terror until it feels as if your mind might crack like the porcelain of the old doll. And then, abruptly, the melody and voices stop. The silence is so intense it thrums. You stand panting, back pressed against a far wall, eyes locked on the gramophone as though it were a living thing capable of theft and deceit. The platter hesitates, wavers, and then withdraws the needle, releasing the final tension like a held breath. One last record emerges, smaller and red as dried blood, the grooves swirling unnaturally. It floats to the platter and settles in place. A whisper, singular and intimate, rises from the silence. Listen. You obey, your spine stiff with both dread and a grim resolve. The needle clicks, and a faint hum begins, so low you almost don't notice it. Then, through the static, a child's voice speaks your name. You freeze, heart lurching. The voice continues, recounting moments from your own life, small betrayals, secret fears, The first time you lied to someone you loved. The gramophone, it seems, has turned its lens on you, broadcasting your own nightmares for all to hear. A cruel chuckle curls in the melody, and you realize with a hollow laugh of your own that the house has become the gramophone, and you, its record. Every revelation, every sin etched into your soul is now etched into the grooves of that red disc. Trembling, you reach for the crank once more, willing the machine to stop, to end this broadcast. But the handle spins on its own, winding tighter, louder, as though the gramophone feeds on your fear. The horn tilts toward you, the face is in its depths, twisting into mocking grins, summoning the last of your strength. You slam your fist against the turntable, sending the record flying into the darkness beyond the horn. The needle snaps off, and the gramophone shudders, then falls silent. The chamber plunges into stillness, broken only by the distant drip of water and the faint echo of laughter that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere. You press your palm to your pounding heart, the memory of your own whispered confessions still ringing in your ears. Stepping back, you take one last look at the broken machine. Its horn lies twisted, shattered by your desperate blow, and tiny shards of brass glitter on the floor like fragments of a shattered dream. You realize that the house will find another gramophone, another record, and the cycle will continue. But for now, you have fractured the spell. You turn away, the chamber's oppressive gloom receding behind you as you slip through the doorway and return to the flickering corridor. The whisper of the walls seems subdued, as though they too are catching their breath. Yet you know this respite is temporary, for wherever the gramophone waits to play again, the past will always find a way to sing its horrors anew. You step into the corridor, and the very air bristles against your skin, alive with hungry anticipation. The fan's distant whir from your bedroom seems like a lullaby compared to this ceaseless murmur of yearning that hums in the walls. Every surface quivers, as though the house itself breathes in tandem with your own ragged breath. You recall the doll's laughter, the gramophone's lament, each a feast laid before unseen predators. Now, you sense them assembling for their greatest banquet yet. The corridor stretches before you, consumed by shadows that coil and unknot in restless agitation. With every footstep, the floorboards emit hollow groans, echoing your heartbeat in the silent expanse. You pause under a flickering sconce and notice shapes writhing in the gloom, forms too indistinct to name, yet unmistakably alive. Their movements are deliberate, as if stalking prey. You know with a sinking certainty that these creatures live for a single purpose: to feed on fear. A drop of sweat trickles down your temple, and you force yourself to control your breathing. Heartbeats loud enough to shatter glass betray your panic, but you clamp down on each rising wave of dread, determined to starve them of their meal. You recall the doll's words, "I've tasted fear, and it is delicious." Every echo of that phrase courses through you like a poisoned arrow. You lean back against the wall, mindful to steady your pulse. The corridor's tremor eases for a moment, as though disappointed by your restraint. Stillness reigns for a heartbeat before the shadows congeal into shapes that step forward. Tall figures with elongated limbs and featureless faces glide toward you on silent soles. They move in concert, a predatory dance around their quarry, each body swaying with insatiable hunger. Their presence intensifies the dark. Light recoils from them, leaving their outlines flickering in the sconce's wan glow. You feel a tug in your chest, fear rising despite your resolve. You remind yourself that feeding them requires only the minutiae of your terror. You close your eyes and count. 1, 2, 3, forcing each breath to draw calmness in rather than dread. Your senses sharpen. The faint drip of water from somewhere up ahead, the distant squeal of metal hinges, the soft, eager rasp of claws sliding against plaster. When you feel their proximity at your back, you inhale slowly, filling your lungs with defiance. You exhale the last of your fear into the corridor, a futile offering. The creatures halt, their swaying abruptly still, as if puzzled by the emptiness in your veins. Given space, you turn and face them. Their faceless heads tilt in unison, aristocratic bows from macabre avatars of terror. A hush falls, so weighted you can taste it on your tongue. Then a flicker of movement. One reaches a hand toward your chest, hovering just short of contact. You lock eyes with it, eyes that reflect you, not their own, and see the beast waver. It shudders and withdraws its hand, as though deprived of sustenance. Around you, others step back, their hunger momentarily sated by your refusal to feed. A mocking whisper rises in the air. So, little left for us. It's a chorus of rasps and sighs, all speaking in unison, yet each with its own timbre. The voices circle you like wind swirling fallen leaves, carrying with them memories of every moment you ever trembled. The old schoolyard bully, the bedside confession you blundered, the half-truths that haunted you at night. You clamp your jaw. No more, you vow aloud, voice steady but soft. You will not dine on me. The figures sway again, slower this time. Hesitant predators whose prey grows scarce. Their forms blur, retreating into the corners where light fears to tread. You take a step forward, each movement bold, reclaiming ground inch by inch. The corridor seems to recoil from your will. The sconces glow, brightening in concession. Heart still pounding, you press ahead, determined to find the source of this hunger, to cut off the feast at its root. At the corridor's end, a heavy door stands ajar, the gap spilling a faint red glow. The hunger in the air intensifies as you approach, as though a grand banquet awaits beyond. You push open the door and step through into a vast chamber lit by a series of dripping chandeliers fashioned from human bone. Below them, a great table stretches into shadow, laden not with food, but with remnants of nightmares, jars of tears, vials of shattered hope, platters of dreams half remembered. The table is set for a feast the likes of which no mortal could imagine. Seated at the head is the thing you have felt breathing in the walls, the house's true heart. It resembles a hulking mass of darkness, braided with sinewy cords that pulse like veins. Limbs sprout from its sides, each ending in a maw of jagged teeth. It regards you with countless eyes that glitter like dying stars. Around the table, your previous antagonists recline. The doll, the faceless shadows, the gramophone's horn spewing faint laments. Each brings a chalice dripping with your fears, ready to drink the essence of you. You step forward until the hardwood floorboard cracks beneath your weight, announcing your arrival. The darkness ripples as though a tide raised by a stone thrown into a void. The creature's eyes fix upon you, and a laugh like splintering wood echoes through the hall. Our favorite dish returns. It purrs, voice like distant thunder. We've grown so hungry since you last fed us. Its words send tremors through the floor, jolting you to the core. You swallow, summoning every shred of courage. Not tonight, you declare, voice echoing off the bone chandeliers. I refuse to be your sustenance. The table quakes as the monster's grin widens. Its multiple eyes narrow in disbelief. Refuse. You cannot deny our nature. The doll at its side rises, porcelain shards tinkling as it steps forward. We were born of fear, it whispers, voice honey thin. We live for it. You grip the edge of the table, feeling the cold splinters dig into your palms. But I am more than my fears, you counter. You cannot live on shadows forever. A low rumble shakes the chamber. The jar of tears shivers, and the vials clink in a discordant chorus. The creature's sinewy chords pulse faster. Without fear, we die, it intones. Your courage starves us. For a heartbeat, you consider surrender, but your vision clears in the worshipful darkness. You see past the monstrous facades to the empty need at their cores. You lift your chin and speak with unwavering clarity. Then starve, you say. If your existence depends on my terror, you were never worthy of life. A roar of anger rends the air, so fierce it feels like the world might shatter. The chandeliers swing violently, casting macabre light across the gathered specters. The table's contents tremble, then topple in a silent avalanche of broken dreams. The creature lunges, an undulating black wave poised to crush you, but your resolve holds. In the moment before impact, a single, perfect calm passes through you. You close your eyes and breathe in the hollow space where fear once gnawed. When you open them, the room has changed. The monstrous forms convulse and dissipate like mist under sunlight. The bone chandeliers crumble, raining dust onto the barren floor. The great table collapses inward, folding itself into the earth. The doors behind you fly open, revealing the corridor you left behind. Bright, welcoming, free of hunger. You step back through, the heavy door slamming shut behind you with a finality that reverberates in your chest. The corridor stands as still, the sconces glow steady, the air at last at peace. The shadows that once writhed at its edges now sit quietly, unthreatening. You exhale a breath you did not know you held, the tremor in your legs easing. Behind the door you escaped. The chamber of terror starves, its feast denied, its hunger unfulfilled. You walk on, past fading echoes of laughter and the faintest defeated sigh. The house's appetite has been checkmated, if only for a time. As you advance, you understand that the true power lies not in the absence of fear, but in mastery over it. And while other chapters of this endless story await, you carry with you the knowledge that even the darkest curses can be undone by a single, fearless heart. You find the trapdoor at the end of the corridor before you even realize it's there. A warped wooden hatch nearly hidden by the peeling wallpaper and the curl of a stray floorboard. The handle is cold to the touch, as though dipped in winter's breath, and when you lift it, a groaning moan rises from below. A spiral of dust drifts upward, carrying with it driftwood hints of damp earth and mildew. Ahead lies a flight of narrow, winding steps, descending into darkness so profound it seems to swallow even the glow of your own heartbeat. You hesitate, recalling the lessons of every previous chapter, the house's hunger, its knack for twisting reality, and yet something propels you forward, an unspoken vow to unmask the heart of this nightmare. Your foot finds the first step, and you descend, each creak of wood sounding like a crypt's gate opening. The walls close in, slick with condensation that beat into rivulets at some forgotten winter's breath. With each turn of the spiral, The drip of water becomes a chorus, rhythmic, expectant, like a congregation awaiting a sermon of dread. You grip the banister, ragged and splintered, and force yourself to breathe steadily, aware that the air grows heavier with every meter you descend. A faint blue glow spills from a crack at the bottom, as though the very stones of the labyrinth pulse with an otherworldly certainty. At the foot of the stairs, you step onto a mosaic of cracked tiles, forming a circular pattern. A compass rose, whose points writhe like tendrils, blurring the distinction between path and prison. You test your foot on each segment, and the tiles shift slightly beneath you, realigning in concentric circles that beckon and repel in equal measure. You understand at once that this is no mere cellar, but a living maze, one that will reshape itself to your fear. You steel yourself, planting your feet firmly and choosing a direction. Left feels like an easy promise, right a rickety dare, straight ahead a bold defiance. You advance, trusting the faint hum in your ears to guide you. The corridor narrows, lit by a series of wall sconces carved from ancient bone. Flickers of light reveal walls inscribed with sketched maps, some accurate reflections of the maze, others crossing absurdly into impossible loops and sudden voids. You brush your finger along one map, feeling the grooves still warm from the brush of some long-departed hand. The sketches morph under your gaze. A doorway appears where there was none. A dead end dissolves into a passage. You realize that reading these maps is like chasing your own shadow. Every detail both informs and betrays, and the walls creak with amusement at your confusion. A soft laughter echoes, childlike but hollow, ricocheting off the stone. You turn, but nothing moves. No figure lurks in the gloom. No shape disturbs the shifting shadows. The laughter fades into a whisper. Lost again? It curls around your ankles, like smoke, tugging at your resolve. Black humor drips from the voice, teasing as though this were a game you'd signed up for. You grit your teeth. I'm not lost, you reply, voice echoing hollowly. I'm determined. A slow clap rings out, distant and mocking. The walls pulse in response, bricks shifting as though in applause. You push onward until the corridor splinters into 3 narrow passages, each labeled in faded Latin: Memoria, Timor, and Veritas. Memory, fear, and truth. The labels feel like traps, choices that promise revelation, but taste of torment. You recall the commander's voice in the dark, the walls feeding on fear, the doll's guilt, the gramophone's secrets. You close your eyes, take a breath, and open them on Veritas. Truth is your weapon. You step into the passage, and the walls groan approval, their grooves aligning into a jagged arrow pointing forward. The air becomes colder here, and the floor dips into a gentle decline. You hear the soft scuffle of movement ahead, a scraping sound like claws across stone. You pause, heart steady, and wait. The sound stops. You advance, and the sconces flicker violently, revealing a figure crouched at the far end. Someone you recognize. Yourself, younger, eyes wide with fear. The specter flinches, hands covering its throat, as though it cannot speak. You call out, and it raises a finger to its lips, a silent plea. Then it darts past you, disappearing through a hidden door that vanishes as soon as it closes. Your chest tightens. The maze is showing you your own terror, then snatching it away. You follow the sound of dripping water into a vaulted chamber whose ceiling vaults like a cathedral of stone. Pools of stagnant water glaze the floor, reflecting fractured fragments of the walls. In the center stands an iron fountain, long dry, its basin crusted with salt and rust. A plaque reads, "Here, the worst sins are baptized." Black humor tugs at you. Baptism by rot and regret. You kneel at the basin's edge, fingertips grazing the residue, and see in the murk your own reflection. Strained, haunted, but resolute. The image wavers, and suddenly the water ripples, as though something beneath stirs. You pull back, heart thundering, and watch as ripples form a face, twisted, pleading, accusatory. It mouths your name, then dissolves. A sudden crash behind you sends you spinning. The door has vanished, and the corridor you entered is gone. The walls press closer, and the ceiling vault seems to descend. Panic ignites in your gut, but you clamp it down. You remember that fear fuels the house's appetite. Breathe. Steady. Step forward. You find a narrow seam between two slabs of stone, barely wide enough for a shoulder. Squeezing through, your coat catches on jagged edges, but you force passage. On the other side, the corridor opens into a wide gallery where dozens of doors line the walls, each identical. Heavy iron bound with rusty chains. The laughter returns, swirling around you. You walk the length of the gallery, counting doors. 1, 2, 9, 15, 27. Behind each door, the house's darkest fictions await, scenes you dread to imagine. A plaque above door 19 reads, Chapter 8, promising that beyond lies the next ordeal. You press your palm to the cold metal. The chains rattle, as though inviting you to break them. But what if you choose the wrong door? What if the chains bind you instead? A whisper snags your ear. Every door is the right door if you dare. You smile wryly at the house's black joke and turn a heavy key that appears in your pocket, one you didn't know you had. The lock clicks and door 19 swings inward on its own. A gust of stale air brushes your face, scented with smoke and rot. You step through and into a room illuminated by a single skylight, dripping dawnlight that feels impossibly pure for this place. Before you sprawls a table strewn with dozens of identical keys, each labeled with a chapter number. A ledger lies open, its pages stained with ink and something darker. You skim the entries. Your name appears beside each chapter, followed by crossed-out check marks. You look up and see the door behind you has vanished once more. The ledger's final page reads, "The maze cannot be escaped until its author admits defeat." You wrench your gaze back to the keys. To your left, the walls ache with the house's voice. Choose a key. Write your ending. The labyrinth has invited you to seize the pen. A key marked 7 glints in the dim light. With trembling fingers, you lift it, feeling the metal warm in your palm. A second key, unnumbered, waits at the ledger's edge. You sense its promise, an ending of your own design. Black humor whispers from behind the bricks. A brave hero or final victim? You press the unnumbered key to your lips, tasting its cold promise. Then, heart pounding, you turn and find yourself back in the corridor. No doors, no gallery, only the spiral staircase ascending toward a distant glimmer of light. The weight of the unnumbered key in your fist feels like agency reclaimed, a refusal to play by the house's rules. With each step upward, the walls pulse in reluctant recognition, their grooves retracting like a wounded tide. You emerge onto a landing you've passed before. The sconces glow steady, the trap door above your head sealed once more. The labyrinth's maw has relinquished you. but its echo lingers in your veins. You tuck the key into your pocket, a promise and a threat folded into cold iron. As the trapdoor creaks shut, you steel yourself for what comes next, knowing that the chapters ahead will test you anew. But you will write your own fate, even if it means tearing the story apart. You stand before an arched doorway, carved from blackened oak, the words "exiled souls" etched in brittle silver at its crown. A hush falls as your hand grazes the cold metal, and a soft chorus of whispers swirls around your ears, echoes of lives long surrendered to this place. You push the door inward, expecting resistance, but it swings wide on silent hinges, revealing a vast hall lit by pale sconces that burn with ghostly blue flames. The air here tastes of salt and sorrow, as though the salt of tears from every forsaken spirit has settled into the very stone. Beyond you, the corridor you traversed fades away, and you realize this chamber exists outside any map, a sanctuary for those the house has cast aside. Inside, alcoves line the walls like silent confessionals. In each niche, a pair of hollow-eye figures hovers between waking and sleep, their forms translucent and quivering. Some float upright, wavering in tattered garments. Others slump against the stone, arms wrapped around knees, rocking in eternal despair. You cross the marble floor, each footstep a summons, and feel a tug at the edges of your resolve. One figure lifts a head, carved from shadow, lips trembling as if to speak, and you hold your breath, afraid that any word might shatter the fragile barrier between the living and the dead. A chorus of voices greets you, not the dissonant shrieks of earlier chapters, but a soft, longing lament. "Why have you come?" they ask in unison, their tones blending into a singular plea. You swallow, remembering the pact you made with the labyrinth's key, the promise that you would write your own ending. "I seek to free you," you answer, voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. A tremor ripples through the hall, and the nearest alcove flares with sudden light, revealing a soul trapped in a perpetual moment of fear. A child clutching a ragged doll, eyes wide with panic. Black humor curls in the hush. The child's spirit grips its toy, as though both might vanish if released. "Free us," it whispers, voice brittle, like aged paper. "You call this freedom?" The other figures stir, their forms drifting forward in silent accusation. Each spirit wears the face of someone who once tasted hope, then had it torn away. A woman in a nurse's uniform reaches toward you, her arm phasing through the air like mist. "We belong here," she intones. "Our stories feed the walls. Without us, this house would starve." The irony strikes you. These exiled souls, abandoned by every chapter, are both victims and sustenance. Your heart pounds. You picture the doll in the old nursery, the gramophone's lament, the basement's winding corridors. Each confrontation left behind ghosts too fearful or unwilling to move on. You realize that every encounter you endured added to the horde in these niches, souls who froze at terror's apex and could never step beyond it. They are the cast-offs, the lost echoes of your journey. You kneel before the nurse's spirit, voice steady. "Then let me share your burden," you say. "Allow me to carry your stories forward, to weave them into my own tapestry, so that this place no longer claims you as its own." A ripple of surprise runs through the assembly. The child tightens its grip on the ragged doll, then slowly relaxes, as though unlearning a lifetime of panic. One by one, the alcoves brighten, and the spirits drift closer, forming a circle around you. They murmur fragments of their lives, unspoken dreams, final regrets, whispered confessions, all melding into a rising tide of memory. As the wave crescendos, you feel the house's hunger shift, a subtle relinquishing as the exiled souls surrender their claim. A wind of a blue flame sweeps through the hall, lifting each spirit from its stone cradle. Yet as the first spirit begins to ascend, a dark undercurrent stirs. The nurse's face twists, lips curling into a mocking grin. "You would trade your ending for ours?" she hisses, voice edged with bitterness. The child's innocent eyes flame red. "We will not be forgotten." The circle tightens, and you sense their gratitude twist into desperation. "Take us with you," they demand, voices rising into a ragged chorus. Their forms press forward until you feel their cold breath at your neck, a clammy insistence that you cannot elude. Panic flares, but you recall the lesson of the faceless shadows. Fear fuels this place, but courage can starve it. You spread your arms, meeting the spirit's phantom hands with unwavering calm. "I will carry your stories," you promise, "but I refuse to become your host." A deafening silence follows, and the hall itself seems to hold its breath. Then, with a collective sigh, the spirits hover back, forming a ring of drift and light. The nurse's gaze softens, the child's rage subsides, and one by one, they ascend toward the blue flames, their forms dissolving into luminescent motes that swirl heavenward. The hall grows still, the sconces dim, the alcoves stand empty, and the hush remains heavy with absence. You rise unsteadily, chest heaving, acutely aware that you have altered the house's balance. The archway behind you reappears, the corridor of scones and whispering walls beckoning. In your hand, you find a small silver locket left behind by the nurse's spirit, warm to the touch. Inside, a fragment of a page scrawled with a promise. "Remember us, and we live on." You tuck the locket into your pocket, its weight a comfort and a burden both. As you step through the doorway, the echoes of exiled souls fade behind you, but their stories pulse in your veins. The corridor's familiar twilight glow welcomes you back, yet you know that nothing here is quite the same. Each shadow seems to bow in silent respect, each whisper quieter in deference. You carry with you the voices of the forsaken, their memories woven into the tapestry of your own will. Ahead lies the final chapter, one you will write yourself, unbound by the house's hunger, guided by the exiled souls who dared to trust you with their endings. You stand before the iron-bound archway that marks the threshold of the final chamber, heart pounding a relentless rhythm that echoes in the hollow air. Every step you took to arrive here, through whispering walls, shifting corridors, haunted dolls, and starved shadows, has led to this moment of reckoning. Your palms are slick with sweat, and your breath hitches in anticipation as you lift the heavy ring handle. The metal is icy cold, as though forged in the void between nightmares, and you hesitate only for an instant before pulling the door inward. It groans in protest, bearing a yawning darkness, laced with a faint, oily stench that pricks your nostrils. Beyond the threshold, distant thunder rolls in the silence, a portent of the storm you must weather. You swallow and step forward, sealing the door with a final, resounding clang that reverberates through your bones, and the chamber envelops you. The interior is vast, an underground cathedral built from black stone and stained glass windows that glow with a sickly, crimson light. Tall skeletal columns rise on either side, their capitals carved into snarling faces that leer down at you, mouths agape in eternal laughter. The floor is polished obsidian, reflecting the flickering, blood-red panes above, and creating the illusion that you're walking on a river of molten iron. At the far end of the hall perches the monster, a gargantuan mass of writhing shadows and sinew. Its form is mutable. At one moment, humanoid. At the next, a dozen clawed limbs stabbing the darkness, and then coalescing into a single, gaping maw that seems big enough to swallow the world. A low growl vibrates in the room, so deep it makes the air itself tremble, and you realize that the thing's hunger has grown voracious in your absence. Memories crash through your mind. First chapter's tentative steps, doll's vengeful lullaby, gramophone's confessions, labyrinth's shifting walls, exiled soul's lament. Each ordeal feeding this creature's strength. You gasp, understanding that your terror has been its sustenance, that every quiver of your resolve has summoned its power. You grip the unnumbered key in your pocket, its cold weight a talisman against despair. You lift the silver locket, feeling the warmth of the nurse's promise against your chest, and remind yourself that you carry more than fear. You carry every story you've gathered, every soul you've freed, every revelation you've dared to speak. With each inhale, you draw in courage. With each exhale, you cast out the ghost of dread. The monster shifts, elongating into a towering figure clad in living shadows. Its head tilts as though studying you, and a voice seeps from its depths, an orchestra of rasping whispers layered into a single taunting tone. "Welcome, little worm," it hisses. "You have crept through every trap, faced every terror, and yet you stand before me alone. Do you think your trinkets and memories will save you?" Its laugh is like snapping ice. You meet its gaze without flinching. "I don't stand alone," you say, voice steady. "I stand with every soul you cast aside, every secret you consumed, every hope you crushed. They live within me, and they will be my strength." The monster snarls and lunges, the air around it warping into jagged vortexes of darkness. You brace for impact as the thing's clawed limb slams into the stone floor, sending shards of obsidian skittering like falling stars. The force reverberates up your spine, but you hold your ground, planting your feet firmly and gripping the locket. The silver clasp opens in your hand, revealing the fragment of the nurse's promise. You raise it aloft, and a soft azure light spills from its depths, draping you in a gentle glow. The monster recoils, its shadowy tendrils curling away from the pure flame. You feel the exiled soul's warmth seep into your veins, bolstering your courage, as though they stand beside you in flesh and bone. You take a step forward, the obsidian floor cracking underfoot, and call out, "Begone, creature of hunger." Your feast is ended. The creature roars, a cacophonous howl that shatters the stained glass, sending red shards raining down like blood. But the locket's light intensifies, banishing the rising darkness in your wake. You tilt the talisman toward the monster, and the beam cracks through its shadowy form, cleaving it in two. The beast staggers, its multiple voices screaming in discordant terror as the walls of the cathedral writhe and bleed away. You advance, each step echoing like thunder, and thrust the locket forward like a beacon. The monster convulses, its sinew unraveling, its shape dissolving into smears of ink that writhe before fracturing into 1,000 motes and drifting upward. As the last wisp of darkness vanishes, The chamber shudders, and the crimson light fades to pale dawn. The stained glass reforms into clear panes, revealing a sky unblemished by storm. The skeletal columns straighten, their leers replaced by calm, silent witnesses. You stand in the hushed aftermath, chest heaving, the locket's light dwindling to a soft pulse against your heart. The great door you entered through shudders, then swings open on welcoming hinges, revealing the corridor you once called home. You step forward without hesitation, abiding by the promise you made, to seize your own ending. Beyond the threshold, the corridors have lost their hunger. The walls no longer whisper with malice. The fan's distant hum from your bedroom hums like a lullaby in your ears, reminding you that the world you left behind still turns. You press the unnumbered key to your lips again, feeling its cold solidity beneath your fingertips. You find the trapdoor at the end of the corridor, lift it, and ascend the spiral stairs for the final time. The night outside your window is quiet, the moon drifting through a sky softly washed with stars. You open the window and breathe in the cool air, feeling the last tendrils of the house's power peel away from you. You stand at the threshold between two worlds, the one you entered in search of nightmares, and the one you return to bearing only dreams. You clutch the locket close, whisper, "I remember," and release it into the wind. It drifts away, scattering fragments of hope across the silent streets below. Behind you, the house vanishes into legend, a challenge unmet by future trespassers, its corridors forever sealed by the courage you summoned. And as you lay down to sleep at last, you realize that the greatest monsters live not in shadows, but in the fear we choose to feed. You close your eyes, and for the first time in 10 chapters, you welcome the dawn. You awaken with a start, the weight of the night's horrors still clinging to your bones like damp sheets. For a moment, you lie motionless, listening to the familiar hum of your fan and the distant chirp of waking birds. The room is suffused with pale, early light filtering through the curtains, painting the walls in soft gold rather than the bruised indigos of midnight terror. You blink, disoriented, and realize that the nightmares of the house have faded. The air feels ordinary once more. No lurking whispers, no shifting shadows, no hungry void beckoning behind every door. Your heart slows, and you push yourself up, the smooth comfort of reality closing in around you like a tender hug. Rising from the bed, you catch sight of the locket on your bedside table, its silver face dulled by sleep, but still warm to the touch. Inside rests the tiny fragment of the nurse's promise, a reminder of the souls you freed and the courage you summoned to confront the monster within those cursed halls. You trace the engraved words with a fingertip. Remember us, and we live on. And feel a soft smile curve your lips. You tuck the locket into your pocket, knowing that some pieces of nightmares become talismans of strength once you face them head on. You stand and pad across the floor, each footstep steady, unaccompanied by the floorboard protests of that haunted house. The walls here are still your own, adorned with photographs and half-finished paintings, not the grotesque maps and mocking crude sketches of the labyrinth. You cross to the window and throw back the curtains, bathing the room in morning light. A breeze stirs the white sheet at your feet, carrying with it the faint promise of possibility rather than the dank odor of rot. Outside, the world seems impossibly bright. Birds flit across the sky, cars hum down the street, and somewhere a neighbor's dog barks at the new day. For a moment, you allow yourself to savor the mundane, the rustle of turning pages, as you lift the small notebook you brought back from the exiled soul's chamber, the soft scratch of pen on paper as you write down the final line of your journey. I write my own ending. The ink flows easily, as if the horrors you endured only cleared the path for honest confession and quiet strength. You close the book and press your hand against its cover, feeling the imprint of every chapter until now, each test, each confrontation, and realize that they have reshaped you like a sculptor's chisel against stone, carving away fear until only will remains. The memory of the final chamber seeps into your mind, the obsidian floor and the cathedral of carnage where the monster fell. You recall the roar of its disintegration, the shards of darkness scattering like dust in the wind. But that creature was no more than a reflection of the collective dread you carried. You look inward and note the subtle tremor in your chest, the echo of fear still alive, but tamed. You flex your fingers, feeling the blood warm and steady beneath your skin, and chuckle softly at the absurdity of a house that fed on terror as though you were its personal buffet. Black humor bubbles up as you imagine the walls complaining, "No one around to snack on anymore." And you reply, "Better starve than devour me." In the kitchen, you fix yourself a cup of strong coffee, the bitter aroma filling your nostrils and reminding you that even the simplest pleasures can soothe a war-scarred mind. You pour the steaming liquid into your favorite mug, one flecked with chipped paint from countless mornings before the nightmares began, and take a slow sip. The warmth spreads through you, knitting nerves back into place, and you grin to yourself. The world is still absurd, still unpredictable, but it is your absurdity to navigate, your story to shape. Your phone buzzes on the counter, a text from a friend. Ready for that hike today? You glance at the clock. 6:47 a.m. Perfect time to greet the dawn. You tap back a quick yes, set a reminder for 8 a.m., and take another sip of coffee. No haunted house, no cunning doll, no hungry shadows can steal this morning from you. The only beast you face now is the unremarkable challenge of climbing a mountain trail, and that prospect feels divine. You gather your backpack, slipping the locket inside alongside your water bottle and trail map. On the outside world's trailhead, you will carry not just supplies, but the stories of every lost soul you encountered, woven into a quiet courage that glows brighter than any sconce's flame. You leave the house behind with the door firmly closed, the key tossed into a potted plant as a harmless prank on any future intruder. Let them find nothing but ordinary soil and the lingering memory that the scariest monsters can be starved out by simple resolve. Stepping onto the street, you inhale deeply, the cool morning air filling your lungs. The sunrise spills across the horizon, pink and gold ribbons unfurling across the sky. You feel the ghost of fear lift from your shoulders, replaced by anticipation for the day ahead. As you walk toward the trailhead, each step is a declaration. The darkness taught you lessons about fragility, but the dawn reminds you of resilience. You smile at neighbors opening garages, at joggers waving in passing, at a toddler chasing a pigeon along the sidewalk. The world hums with ordinary life, and you are part of its gentle music. At the foot of the mountain path, you pause, turning back for a moment to glance at the home where your nocturnal odyssey ended. The front steps are bathed in light, the windows reflecting the sky. No hint of the labyrinth's gloom. You lift your hand in a quiet salute, a promise kept. Then you face forward, and the trail beckons. The incline looms ahead, rocks and roots waiting to test your footing, sunlight dancing through the canopy above. You plant your foot on the first stone, heart steady, and begin to climb. With each step upward, you greet the morning fully, aware that shadows may linger in memory, but they no longer wield power over your path. As the summit draws nearer, the sky widens, revealing distant peaks and valleys bathed in light. You carry the locket close, its promise glowing softly against your chest. When you finally stand at the top, the world sprawls beneath you, endless and unbound. You open your palm, the locket resting there, and whisper, "We live on." Then you unhook its clasp and let it drift into the wind. The silver charm catches a final glint of dawn before tumbling away, a liberated weight no longer needed to guide you. You watch it fall until it disappears from sight. A laugh escapes you, light, free, a sound unburdened by dread. You raise both arms in victory, the sunrise at your back, and let the wind carry your voice across the peaks. This is my ending. The world answers with a gust that rustles the treetops and lifts the tendrils of your hair, as though applauding your triumph. And in that moment, you know the story does not truly end. It ripples outward, carried in every sunrise you will ever greet. The nightmares may return in dreams, but you will meet them with a heart unafraid, a spirit nourished not by fear, but by the memory of how brightly hope can burn when you learn to feed it. You turn and begin your descent, the trail beneath your feet winding toward home, toward the next chapter written in morning light.